Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Great Voyage. I, the strongest fighter on the Rocks ship. Chapter 81. Including the other 4 elders, as well as the 3 admirals who are affiliated with the world government, naval headquarters, most of them, most likely also possess Conqueror's Haki. It's just that they are not as unscrupulous as pirates. Due to the owner of the Void Throne, their conquerors are never easily revealed. After all, Conqueror's Haki, the so-called King's qualifications, is considered a kind of blasphemy against the king of this world. But so what about high-end conquerors? It's still a little bit behind mine. Yulo's lips curled up into a sneer. The next moment, vast power suddenly swept across the entire venue. Yulo stood there, his clothes rustling, and the dark air flowed towards the white-robed old man's bright red Conqueror's Haki. The black air flow was overwhelming, spreading forward densely, and Marineford's light was blocked and became dark. On the battlefield not far away, the pirates destroyed the enemy and were attracted by the movement here. This is Yulo Kadri's Conqueror's Haki, and that old man also has Conquerors. The pressure is so heavy, I can't even breathe. All the pirates were shocked, and this thrilling Haki made most of the crew feel uncomfortable. You can't bear it anymore, get out now. The leader, an old captain, shouted under pressure. Boom! The 2 Conquerors' Haki touched. The black Haki was as motionless as a mountain, and the fierce red Haki's momentum was immediately blocked. Crackling. Where Haki was entangled, red and black lightning flashed. Under the pressure of the 2 energies, the ground cracked and collapsed, and a ravine appeared, dividing Crescent Square into 2 halves. The clouds in the sky also separated from it, and the clouds on both sides rolled upward, like a canyon in the sky. Ah! One sword-style shadow continuous slash. The white-robed old man let out a low roar, the blade of the sword was covered in armament color, and turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Yulo. He kept waving the long knife, slashing one after another, and fired towards Yulo. At the same time, Yulo was not willing to lag behind, and stood up like a jet of lightning. Thousand Slice Valley. Reikiri flashed with black lightning, covering armament Haki, and waved it in Yulo's hand. A large amount of sword energy enveloped the lightning, and clashed with the shadow chain slash. Boom, boom, boom. Continuous explosions resounded throughout Marineford, and the scattered slashes turned into tiny sword energy. The ground, the walls, and wherever they passed were covered with sword marks. The sword energy lingered on the marks and could not be dissipated for a long time. Whoosh, whoosh, the sound of breaking wind passed by, and the blades of Yulo and the old man in white robe clashed violently over the ravine. Clang, the 2 swords collided, the sky and the earth were pale, and the airflow swept across and spread in all directions. Ha ha, old guy, you are pretty strong. Yulo looked at the old man in white robes in front of him and couldn't help but joked. On the contrary, the white-robed old man's gaze was like a torch, with killing intent and sword intent intertwined. Snort. With a low growl, he was bound to thwart Yulo. The famous sword of the white-robed old man buzzed, and the sword energy on his body surged instantly, with a large amount of sword energy brewing in the blade. In an instant, a suppressed situation was formed. Faced with countless sword energy, Reikiri couldn't help but tremble slightly. Yulo's electric sword energy was being wiped out bit by bit by the white-robed old man's sword energy. Asking for trouble, Yulo sneered. The old guy in front of him was really hardworking. The old man's sword energy and conquerors are not as good as Yulo's, and now he wants to suppress him with his sword energy. Such a close-up burst of sword energy will hurt yourself if you are not careful. But since he did this, let's play with the old man. Let this old guy know that even if you don't use Qinglian's inner fire, you can't beat him with swordsmanship. As Yulo thought, the electric light suddenly blazed, and under the urging of the sword energy continued to pour in. The 2 of them stayed in the air, not holding back at all, and their sword energy continued to be output. Gradually, the lingering sword energy continued to accumulate and flew around the 2 people. At first glance, it was astonishingly spectacular. At this time, a burst of energy was generated between the 2 swords, forcefully forcing Yulo back, and the old man in white robe took 2 steps. Groan. The sound of the sword roar was loud and went straight into people's hearts. The eardrums of Yulo and the old man in white robes couldn't help but sting. This energy turned into sword energy Uzumaki, spinning between the 2 swords, and in the blink of an eye it was more than 10 meters in size. The extremely sharp sword energy spread towards Marineford, and the people fighting in the distance felt the sharp aura coming towards them. Such a sharp sword energy is extremely dangerous. The long-bearded old man who fought with Newgate was very afraid of this sword energy. When he saw the white-robed old man in the center of Uzumaki, he couldn't help but worry about him. Gee, look at him, he can't take down Yulo. Newgate used his fists and Kong Yunchi together. Seeing that the old man in white robe was so desperate and still couldn't do anything to Yulo, his words were full of joy. He glanced at Yulo secretly, but there was an unconcealable shock in his eyes. Dear me, Yulo is really good at fighting, and I, Shiki, can't do any worse. As a great swordsman, Shiki is extremely sensitive to sword energy. Just the spread of sword energy makes his heart throb. However, this also aroused his competitive spirit, and he worked harder and became more courageous in the battle. This Yulo, I really underestimated him. The old man with blonde hair and glasses couldn't help but feel worried even though he was fighting against rocks and was suppressed the whole time. They are getting old after all, and as the fighting continues until now, they feel that their physical strength has dropped significantly. Although I can still try my best to support it, I can't hold on for long. They originally expected the old man in white robes to escape quickly to support them, but they didn't expect that Yulo's strength exceeded their expectations. Two old guys, how dare you get distracted? Rock's eyes were cold, and the sword energy suddenly attacked. The two old men recovered and quickly joined forces to resist. At this moment, Uzumaki's sword energy reached its limit and rushed away from Yulo and the white-robed old man. Boom, boom, Uzumaki spun rapidly and turned into two huge sword energy, slashing towards the sky and the earth. The space seemed to be frozen, with only these two sword energies standing between heaven and earth. Click, click, the sword energy slashed into the ravine, and the land with a radius of hundreds of meters exploded and collapsed. Boom, the deafening loud noise stirred up a large area of dust, and the crescent square of naval headquarters completely collapsed and ceased to exist. Together with Crescent Bay, it crashed into the sea. At this time, on the battleship at sea, the correspondent was holding a phone bug, his mouth open and dumbfounded. Hey, talk, what's going on now? Kong's anxious voice came through the phone. No more, nothing, please speak clearly. After a while, the correspondent came back to his senses. The naval headquarters square and Crescent Bay all collapsed into the sea. What? Kong was furious and wanted to come back immediately. This is Marine's headquarters, it's gone forever. Didn't we talk about a surprise attack on the naval headquarters? How could it turn into the destruction of the naval headquarters? Crescent Bay and the plaza were sunk, but Kong would not have felt that the office building was intact. All the information and files were gone, as well as the headquarters munitions warehouse, which must have been plundered. All of this, Marine's years of accumulation, were destroyed in one day. Kong clenched his fist tightly, his joints cracking, and as a marshal, he felt his heart bleeding. Perhaps the Marine's combat power has not been lost, but the infrastructure and operating conditions have returned to before liberation. Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr, Crane, are angry, full of sense of justice, and feel aggrieved. Rock's pirate, you're too arrogant. Zephyr suddenly became furious and said through gritted teeth. At this time, he still believed in justice. In his heart, naval headquarters was a place full of justice and should not be desecrated. Rock's pirate's behavior broke his bottom line of justice. Marine has suffered 2 defeats, and plans to use this full-scale attack to test the Rock's pirate and promote Marine's reputation. Unexpectedly, Rock's was so cunning, and used a trick to divert the tiger away from the mountain, which made Marine confused. Then they took the opportunity to surprise Marineford and destroyed Marine's base camp. Even if Rock's can be eliminated this time, naval headquarters will suffer heavy losses and will have difficulty operating in a short period of time. This is simply unreasonable. This time we must avenge our disgrace and take down Rock's and the others. Garp suppressed his indignation and said firmly, with great determination. On the contrary, the 3 admirals felt equally angry, but mixed with a little selfishness. Damn Rock's, I'm going to retire soon, and all the money I need to support my retirement will be given to you. The 3 of them were calm on the surface, but inside they were filled with grief and anger, and they cursed hard. Rock's. But what the three of them didn't know was that all the money they had treasured for many years went into Yulo's pocket. Sengoku, Crane, remained silent. Given the current situation, the two of them really didn't know what else to say. The large fleet was on its way at full speed, hoping that the headquarters could drag them back. How is the fighting situation at the scene? Kong controlled his emotions and immediately asked anxiously. As soon as the words fell, everyone trembled and woke up in a hurry. Compared with the loss of naval headquarters, the situation of this battle is the key. The five elders took action personally, and the two adults faced off against Golden Lion Shiki and Whitebeard Newgate. Rox is alone and besieged by two adults. The two adults are currently barely able to resist. The last adult, unable to help Yulo, faced off with him. The large-scale collapse just now was caused by Master Lao Xing and Yulo's uncontrolled sword energy. The correspondent's tone revealed shock, and his voice was trembling. What? Everyone present was shocked and their faces were full of disbelief. Have the leaders of Rock's pirate grown to this point? Marine allocated a large amount of resources to secretly train Sengoku and the three of them. It was not until this full-scale expedition that the three of them reached admiral combat power. If it were Yulo, they would be able to accept it, but Shiki and Newgate actually have such fighting power. How did they practice and how did each of them make such rapid progress? Kong turned to look at the three admirals with a questioning look in his eyes. Admiral regretted it, his eyes flickered slightly, and he shook his head silently. Damn it, five elders can't last long in this situation. Kong cursed in a low voice, his face as gloomy as water, and everyone frowned, thinking about countermeasures. At the moment, Yulo, Shiki, Newgate, and the three old men are evenly matched. However, the two old men who were fighting against Rox had begun to retreat, and it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. The current forward speed has reached the limit of a warship. Still, it will take half a day to get back to naval headquarters. Zephyr spoke in a deep voice, stating the problem at hand. Everyone was silent and thinking. At this rate, by the time they get back, the day lilies will be cold. At this time, Sengoku thought, Rox flew there, why couldn't they? Marshal Kong, we have a solution. Sengoku raised his head suddenly and said loudly. Say it. Kong understands Sengoku's wisdom very well. It's very simple. Please ask the Flying Dragon Admiral to fly over with the Vanguard. Sengoku looked at Admiral Quincy and nodded slightly. As soon as these words came out, everyone suddenly realized, and Kong nodded repeatedly. Immediately, Quincy transformed into a beast, turning into a wind god pterosaur, carrying Kong, Herman, and Alot, and roared away. Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr, Crane, the remaining marine fleet, after learning this lesson, cannot let the fleet have problems again. New World, near Beehive Island. The Roger pirates have been wandering here, always paying attention to the movement. Originally observing from a distance, the informant in Marine revealed that Rox led a group of people to surprise Naval Headquarters Marineford. Rox, Newgate and others, the most feared ones, are not on Beehive Island. As a result, Roger's pirate ship dared to penetrate deep into the enemy's hinterland. Captain Roger, Senior Rayleigh, Senior Jabba, are we going to attack Beehive Island? The young Bullet, with muscular limbs and high-spirited eyes, asked eagerly. Although the Yulo he was looking forward to was not there, the silver axe on the island, John, was still extremely powerful. Bullet, who is naturally warlike, is not picky about food at this time and just wants to have a good fight. You kid, please be quiet. Whether you want to be beaten or not is another matter. Jabba glared at Bullet and gestured angrily. Rayleigh on the side said nothing, looking at Roger standing on the bow of the boat. After a while, Roger put away the phone, turned around and walked back to the three of them. No need to fight, let's go back. After Roger finished speaking, Bullet jumped so high. The five elders personally stalled for time, while Garp and the others stayed behind to guard the large fleet. Kong and the three admirals rushed back to Marineford at full speed. Roger explained it to Rayleigh, Jabba, and Bullet, including some details. It's too late for them to rush back. Bullet was a little frustrated and immediately grasped the key point. It looked like he still wanted to fight. Bullet, have you forgotten that Admiral Quincy's ability is that of an ancient wind god pterosaur? Rayleigh said in a playful tone. Bullet became more decadent. Quincy's speed means he can get back in time. Even if his energy is exhausted, there are still 3 of them, Kong, Herman, and Islet. We should be able to turn around and suppress Rox and the others, but it's still unknown how we can win them. Jabba held his chin and expressed his opinion. Even if the fleet rushes back, it's not necessarily possible to win. Rox is hidden too deeply. No one knows his true strength. Rayleigh sighed dejectedly, still not optimistic about Marine. Bullet seemed silent, his thoughts already far away. Ha 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 ha, these are not important, there are only 2 results. World government and Marine paid a huge price to capture Rox and the others. Of course everyone is happy. They tried their best this time and still couldn't win Rox. It's time to reflect. Our intention to cooperate may be reconsidered. Roger grinned and laughed, all worries were swept away, and he felt extremely happy. No matter what the final result is, they will definitely make a profit. Rayleigh and Jabba were stunned. They couldn't help but look at each other and nodded in unison. Roger is right, if 5 elders and all Marines, such an unprecedented lineup, still can't beat Rox. I'm afraid we really have to unite them and destroy Rox together. As early as the news that Yulo injured Admiral came out, Roger expressed his intention to cooperate with Marine, but Kong decisively refused. Let's withdraw from this sea area. Since we won't attack Beehive Island, let's go attack somewhere else. Occupying the outer islands of Rox Pirate, it's time to expand our territory. Roger held his waist with both hands, threw his head back, laughed, and shouted boldly. The next moment, an excited roar covered Roger's voice. Ha 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 ha, I can finally fight. Bullet was so excited that he changed his silent attitude. At this time, the naval headquarters, Marineford, is in ruins. Rox's battle with the blonde old man and the old man with glasses became more and more comfortable. After resisting for a long time, the physical strength of the 2 old men was approaching its limit. At a disadvantage, Rox could no longer resist all attacks, and wounds began to appear on his body. 2 old guys, let's see how long you can last. Rox continued to output, a sneer appeared on his face. The 2 old men were about to run out of gas and energy. If they hadn't tried to hide their strength, they would have been killed by the sword right now. Quote. The old man with blonde hair and glasses gritted his teeth and remained silent, desperately resisting the attack. Clatter, clatter, clatter. There was a continuous sound of footsteps, the 2 couldn't stop retreating, and wisps of blood dripped from the air. The other 3 old men saw that their companions were in increasingly dangerous situations, but they could only feel helpless and angry. Yulo, Shaki, and Newgate were entangled, and the 3 of them were unable to escape and were helpless. The blonde old man and the old man with glasses became slower on defense, so in their eyes, Rox's knife became faster and faster. Just when the blade was about to fall, a warship suddenly appeared on the sea level in the distance. Boom! There was a burst of wind, and a white trajectory took off from the battleship, shooting toward the shore. In an instant, the white trail blocked Rox's knife and pushed the 2 old men out. This is a middle-aged man, wearing a white suit and white robe. Facing Rox, his plain face could not help but look solemn. Bang! The armed fists collided with the sharp blade, and the strong force reverberated back. The man in white retreated and came to the side of the old man with blonde hair and glasses. The 2 of them were closing their eyes and regulating their breath. Rox continued to attack, and their physical strength was unsustainable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Six Styles' life returns, quickly regenerating physical strength. Otherwise, the man in white alone would not be able to hold Rox. Oh, Admiral Combat Power, CP0 people. Such a big CP0, you are the only admiral, why don't you come with a few more? Rox sneered, disapproving, and his overlord courage was clearly evident. 3 admiral-level combat might be a bit tricky, but the strength of those 2 old men has declined and is not as good as it was at its peak. If they really want to fight, Rox's strength is still worthy of the 3 of them. Haha, Rox, what a shameless statement. Look at the 3 of us, we must take you down. The blonde old man and the old man with glasses had almost recovered their physical strength and stood up with a sneer. The man in white was juxtaposed with the 2, and 3 powerful auras were entangled together. Watch out! The 3 of them had blazing eyes and roared in anger as they attacked Rox at the same time. Huh, here we come, that's good. The three old men in the battle felt relieved. With the addition of the man in white, I can't say that I can win rocks, but at least I can compete. There is no need to be beaten back and forth like before, without the ability to fight back, or even in danger of one's life. On the contrary, Yulo, Shiki, and Newgate reacted completely differently. The strongest shield is CP0, and it indeed has admiral combat power. Yulo and the old man in white robe were separated by the blade at the touch of each other, then they glanced at each other and raised their brows. I have seen a lot of admiral combat power, but this is the first time I have seen one with CP0, but to be called the strongest, he must have a lot of strength. Just like those rumors, the CP0 organization is extremely hidden. It is only confirmed that it has admiral combat power, but does not know the specific situation. Immediately, Yulo concentrated on fighting. The situation at Rocks had nothing to do with him. The three admirals only have combat power, and they can't do anything to Rocks. At least according to Yulo's observation, Rocks has not been used during the battle, with his weapons deployed and conquerors entangled. Unfathomable strength, you can imagine how powerful it is, so far in the sea, except for the one among the flowers. Perhaps, only Rocks can fight against three admiral-level warriors alone. Shiki and Newgate, after being surprised, quickly jumped into the battle. The sailing warship finally arrived at Crescent Bay. A group of strange, inhuman soldiers stepped on the ruins and killed the pirates in the distance. These soldiers have various mechanical weapons on their limbs. They are humanoid weapons from the Ministry of Science. They carry out mechanical transformations on the human body to improve the combat capabilities of individual soldiers. As expected, the capabilities of humanoid weapons are somewhat unexpected. The pirates started a battle with them and were caught off guard. Except for the capable captain, the crew members were all slightly injured. I'll tell you, are they humans or ghosts? These mechanical weapons are really troublesome. They are both fire-breathing and electric. Facing an unfamiliar opponent, although they were not defeated, they could barely resist. When the captains saw this, they couldn't help but curse. The physical fitness of these soldiers is at the level of ordinary crew members, and some are even worse. However, the addition of mechanical weapons made up for the lack of physical strength, and suppressed the pirate crew in terms of individual combat capabilities. This wave of operations perfectly explained how technology changes strength. When Yulo saw this scene, he felt emotional. Linlin and Kaido, who were watching the battle, naturally noticed it. Linlin saw their attacks. The flames, thunder and lightning looked very similar to hers, and frowned in extreme displeasure. A majestic slash of the sword struck out, killing everyone. Kaido, who was covering his wound, followed with a mace. They were brutally tortured by the old man in white robes and could only watch the battle silently. They had already been filled with anger. If I can't beat the Admiral's combat power, why can't I beat you, a bunch of strange minions? Kaido endured the pain of the wound, and his burly body rushed forward, knocking away a humanoid weapon. What's going on? It's quite hard. Kaido felt a slight numbness on his arm and couldn't help but feel confused. However, he didn't expect that much and continued to vent his grievances. Linlin's flames and thunder kept rushing towards the humanoid weapons, but they were all blocked, which made her angry. Wei Guo, taking advantage of the gap between attacks, Linlin launched another slash, intending to take a breath. But who knew, two shadows suddenly appeared among the group of humanoid weapons. A clang. The two figures jointly resisted, and the slash hit the mechanical arm, causing the two of them to retreat continuously, leaving deep footprints on the ground. How can it be? Linlin was slightly surprised. The auras of these two people were not strong and they could not be stopped. Their robotic arm seems to be sea stone. Kaido leaned over, thought for a while, and said in a deep voice. So that's it, it's sea stone. Linlin looked at the two people in the distance with a confused expression. He saw that the robotic arm was indeed different from other soldiers, and there was no trace on the surface. No wonder he dared to take her blow head on. He thought he was so strong because of the hardness of the sea stone. It can be seen from the footprints on the ground that the two men are not feeling well either. Linlin, I'm not a capable person, let me deal with them. Kaido's thoughts were rough and subtle, and considering that Linlin was a person with abilities, he took the initiative to come forward. That's it, I'll clean up the soldiers and you deal with them. Lin did not refuse, he accepted decisively and turned around to change the battlefield. She is demon fruit power, sea stone is specially designed to restrain her, and she will be unable to turn around when touched. Although Lin's strength is much stronger than those two humanoid weapons, in battle, as long as she encounters sea stone, no matter how powerful she is, she will be at the mercy of others. She is so young and beautiful and has not given birth to enough children yet, so it is safer to be on the safe side. Lin controlled the flames and thunder, and the sword energy on his long sword was shooting out. Together with the pirates, he killed everyone. Thunder 8 trigrams. When the two men saw Lin walking away, they immediately wanted to catch up, but were stopped by Kaido. The three of them had no choice but to fight, with Kaido's mace pressing down on them and beating them. The only advantage the two have, the sea stone robotic arm, is completely useless. The old man in white robe noticed this scene during the battle, and his face turned red with anger. With the arrival of this wave of humanoid weapons, we finally gained some advantages, but they were broken again in the blink of an eye. Hey, old guy, what are you thinking about? Watch out! Yulo muttered deliberately, and the tip of Reikiri's knife suddenly raised. The sword energy emitting electric light struck the opponent's throat. The white-robed old man's observation haki was always aware of Yulo's attack. He leaned back and avoided the electric sword energy. The old man used the inertia of his body to do a few backflips and distanced himself from Yulo. Hiss. Hu. Hiss. Hu. After using all his strength, the old man in white robe was panting and his physical strength was obviously reduced. On the other hand, Yulo's face didn't turn red, his heart didn't beat, and he seemed to be fine. The old man used all his moves, but Yulo blocked them all with ease. The old man's physical strength is really low, and time is running out. Yulo looked at the old man panting, knowing that he didn't have much energy left, and thought to himself. It's been a long time since the attack on naval headquarters and then the battle until now, and one of the CP0 Admiral forces has rushed over. Kong, San Admiral and others should also be rushing back. Yulo will not fight endlessly, otherwise he will fall into the trap of the world government. Old man, stop pretending, give it back with your life, and regain some of your strength. After a while, the confrontation was interrupted, and the aura on Yulo's body began to change. Quote. The old man in white robe had an ugly face, the muscles at the corners of his mouth twitched violently, and he was grinding his teeth in frustration. He was indeed secretly recovering his strength, but Yulo exposed it to his face, leaving him speechless. He fought with his life in this battle and never missed any opportunity. Hey, then take another move from me. Yulo didn't care about the old man's reaction, his momentum changed at this moment. In the sharp sword intention, Conqueror's power rose and condensed into the sword intention. It did not explode in a large area, but concentrated a little. The two wills were united into one, and there was a strong sense of crisis. Yulo spoke for no reason, and there was no need to play tricks on him. This should be his special move, but it turned out to be a monster. The old man in white robe was frightened and subconsciously became nervous. Boom! Yulo activated the razor, and the air was blasted, turning into a flash of black lightning, stabbing at the old man in white robe. Whoosh! Yulo appeared in the sky above the white-robed old man. The Reikiri, covered in armed colors and dancing with electric light, slashed at the old man. The electric sword energy tore through the air, causing the old man in white robes to feel pain on his face. While he was always vigilant, he was still filled with doubts. Although this sword energy was strong, it did not scare him. Could it be that Yulo was really bluffing? As his thoughts were flowing, the old man in white robes stepped forward, his haki and swordsmanship reaching the ultimate level. In the air currents raged, and white sword energy and black electric sword energy came closer and closer. Hee. At this moment, a sneer sounded, and the corner of Yulo's mouth twitched. The sword intent was extremely concentrated. Conqueror's haki moved, and two black airflows followed Yulo's hands and flowed to Reikiri, wrapping the blade around it. In an instant, Reikiri's aura surged, and black lightning crackled. The concentration of Conqueror's haki made the sharp sword even more sharp, adding another layer of pressure as heavy as a mountain. Suddenly, Reikiri's blade was filled with power like a mountain in the old man's sight. This is Conqueror's entangled. The white-robed old man was shocked, and let out a horrified roar. The domineering and fierce attacks were getting bigger and bigger in his pupils. Damn it, try your best, ah. The attack was so close that he couldn't care less, the old man roared ferociously. The arrow was on the string and had to be fired. Even if he didn't resist, he couldn't dodge it. Boom! The two knives intertwined and collided in the air. The air exploded and the airflow rolled back, wreaking havoc between the heaven and the earth. A black ball of air appeared between the two swords, flashing with black arcs. The moment they collided, the old man felt the pressure of a mountain. Conqueror's haki, with a little concentration, cannot withstand any powerful defense. Boom! The old man was hit by a mountain-like force, and his body fell toward the ground. Even the consciousness in his mind was in a trance for a moment. What's going on with this Yulo? It turned out to be Conqueror's entanglement. The terrifying Conqueror's fluctuations passed fleetingly, and the four old men glanced at it and saw an incredible scene. They and the rock's side were there, and this was the first one to wrap up with Conquerors. They don't use Conquerors easily, so although the 5-person Conquerors have advanced strength, they have not mastered advanced usage skills. As far as they know, only 3 people, including rocks, can use Conqueror's entanglement. Even Shiki and Newgate have a high probability of not mastering it yet, but the current Yulo is not only able to retract and release freely, but also has great power. Conqueror's entangling blow directly hit the white-robed old man, and he fell like a kite with a broken string. The blood spurted out in the air, leaving a red trail. Meanwhile, Shiki, Newgate, and Rocks also took notice. Gee la la la, what a Yulo boy, what a Conqueror's entanglement. Whitebeard Newgate was startled, now really shocked. He has also mastered Conqueror's winding for a short time, and he knows that it is not easy to master it. Newgate practiced for more than a year and finally mastered it in one fell swoop, but Yulo mastered it without saying a word. He has been at sea for so many years, and his natural talent and physique are outstanding, but compared with monsters, he is really not good enough. Gia ha ha ha, as expected of Yulo, it really surprises me. Golden Lion Shiki separated from the old man in the suit and laughed very unexpectedly, feeling happy for Yulo. Deep down, I felt anxious and my mood was a little complicated. His strength was improving, and Yulo was also improving. Unexpectedly, Yulo would take a step ahead of him and master Conqueror's entanglement. Unknowingly, Yulo's strength has been ahead of him since the last battle. Ha 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 ha. On another battlefield, Rocks was in a cheerful mood, and his laughter echoed endlessly. He used emission haki, which made him more powerful. With his sword skills and haki's coordination, his fighting power became more and more fierce. Even with the addition of CP0 Admiral, Rocks still had the upper hand against the 3 admirals, 1 against 3. The man in white and the 2 old men could only cooperate to resist and look for opportunities to launch a counterattack. Just when the old man in white robe was about to fall to the ground, Yulo took action again. Groan. Reikiri seemed to feel Yulo's will and couldn't help but tremble and make a sword roar. Reikiri, let's see if we can take him away with one sword. Yulo stroked the blade gently and murmured to himself, the sword's intent boiling. The boundless sword energy condensed, and a bone-chilling cold light shone on the pitch-black sharp blade. Qinglong yin flowing water. A soft drink sounded indifferently, reaching everyone's ears. Yulo stepped lightly on the air, and his figure became blurred, as if he melted into the air. In an instant, Yulo disappeared, and within everyone's sight, a long blue sword energy dragon was entrenched in the air with an imposing manner. Yin. The blue sword energy was long, and as the breath escaped, the surrounding air trembled, like a sword roaring or a dragon roaring. The huge dragon of sword energy stirred up the air and rushed straight towards the white-robed old man. Damn pirate, stop it. Under everyone's attention, Yulo's sword moves rose again, and before his power surpassed him, even a fool knew what he wanted to do. The blonde old man's face changed drastically, and he let out an angry roar, his eyes about to burst. Seeing that his old friend was in a life-and-death crisis, the blonde old man was heartbroken and wanted to rush over immediately. How could Rocks let him succeed? He flashed in front of him and unleashed an emission haki. Bang! With one blow, he blocked the blonde old man and made him step back. A paralyzed dog and 2 old guys are not allowed to go anywhere. Your opponent is me. Rocks sneered, and the top conquerors hockey-locked the three of them and crushed them. How could he let the blonde old man save the old man in white robe? Rocks wished that all the 5 elders would die. What's more, under his offensive, the blonde old man had no time to care for himself and still had time to care for others. It seems that I don't feel the despair deeply enough. Do you think this is the only strength I have? Snort. Rocks snorted coldly, released Conqueror's hockey, and charged at the 3 people with a fierce momentum. This is top-notch. Conqueror's hockey. The blonde old man and the old man with glasses released high-level Conquerors and resisted Rock's powerful and suffocating Conqueror's hockey. The man in the suit did not awaken Conquerors and had to stand slightly back. We can't worry about so much and focus on holding Rock's back. Trust him. Rocks rushed towards him, and the calm old man with glasses scolded him. Like the blonde old man, he also wanted to save the old man in white robe, but the situation did not allow it and there was nothing they could do. And Rocks seems to be getting stronger again, which makes him feel great pressure. The blonde old man looked unwilling, but he could only nod his head, and the 3 of them started fighting with Rocks. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit were also entangled by Shaki and Newgate, unable to escape. All this happened in a short moment. The sword energy dragon and the old man in white robe were very close. In another breath, the old man in white robe will be swallowed up, and even if he cannot die, he will be seriously injured. When the sword energy dragon rushed towards him, the white-robed old man's mind had already recovered. But the impact of Yulo's blow was really strong, and the force on his body hadn't been completely discharged. He wanted to dodge but couldn't move now. The long sword energy dragon reflected in the white-robed old man's pupils became bigger and bigger. Ah, damn it, move it quickly, move it. The fallen old man in white robe was covered in a biting chill, and his hairs were dripping with cold sweat. But he was unwilling to give up. His face was so ferocious that it was almost deformed, and he kept roaring in his heart, mobilizing the remaining strength in his body to break away from the mountain-like impact. Yan, roar. The deafening sword chant and dragon roar, the sharp sword energy rushed towards his face, and the old man's white robe was covered with sword marks. Give me, move. The dragon of sword energy arrived in an instant. Under the threat of life and death, the old man in white robe fought for his life and roared ferociously to the sky. His teeth were covered with blood and flew out. At the last moment, there was a click, as if the shackles were broken, and the control of the body returned to his hands, and he suddenly felt like he was reborn. He mobilized his last strength, stepped on moonwalk, and rushed upward with all his strength, barely dodging the sword energy dragon. Ha ha ha. Dodge, I dodge. The old man in white robe was in a miserable state, his physical strength had been exhausted, and he was grinning hoarsely, with a bit of madness. To this age, he has never experienced anything like this before. His heart palpitations are as if Shinigami has arrived, and he is still terrified at this moment. The other 4 old men were always paying attention to their old friend, and they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw that their old friend was safe and sound. But, that's it. Yan, roar. The sword chant and dragon roar resounded through the sky again, accompanied by Yulo's voice. That's it. These 4 simple words are like a magic sound that enters the ears and captivates the mind. The sword energy dragon moved, its movement trajectory changed, the huge dragon head was raised, the dragon body turned over, and the airflow was raging. The old man in white robe was exhausted and had no power to resist. He felt the fierceness behind him and didn't even have time to turn around. In an instant, when he turned around, he swallowed the white-robed old man, the huge dragon body passed by, and the sharp sword energy slashed past him. PFF'd. Marineford was silent, except for the sound of blood splattering. The sword energy dragon completely passed through, and the white-robed old man's body slowly dissipated, and Yulo's figure was revealed. He stood in the air with a calm face and indifferent eyes. He moved his right hand and Reikiri turned around and flicked it to his side. The blood stained by Reikiri's blade slowly dripped down the tip. The old man in white robe behind Yulo had a horrified look on his ferocious face, and his eyes seemed frozen in disbelief in his big eyes. As the blood dripped from Reikiri's blade, the old man in white robe also fell hard. With a bang, it hit the ground. Boom! The impact of falling from a high altitude caused a deep pit to form on the ground, with gravel and dust flying everywhere. The already dilapidated Marineford has a large number of cracks spreading again, and there is a faint tendency of collapse. The shocked pirates and the remaining humanoid soldiers seemed to feel the ground shaking, and then they all came back to their senses. Do you feel it? The ground is shaking violently. This is not worth mentioning. The important thing is that Yulo Kadri actually severely damaged the 5 elders. Master Yulo's long sword energy finally raised its head. It's incredible. The captains and crew members were so shocked that they completely forgot about it. They were holding weapons in their hands. They looked at each other and talked about it. On the contrary, there were not many soldiers left in the science department. Seeing the defeat of the 5 elders, they immediately lost their fighting spirit. Some soldiers even trembled with fear. The power of the long-sword dragon made them intimidated. Is this Yulo's strength? Linlin and Kaido were stunned, this scene lingering in their minds. Charlotte Linlin was fine, she was just in shock, but Kaido was different, feeling extremely bitter and powerless. He and Linlin worked together to receive a blow from the old man in white robe, which was very difficult, but Yulo alone easily defeated the old man in white robe. And Kaido knows that this is not Yulo's full strength. Yulo has no power from beginning to end. The 4 old men never expected that this would happen. The old man in white robe had already dodged, but who knew that the long-sword dragon suddenly raised its head and turned around. Ah, you deserve to die. Seeing the old man seriously injured and lying on the ground, the grumpy blonde old man burst into rage and went berserk. What kind of monster is this Yulo? The old man with glasses was equally angry, but much calmer than the blonde old man. However, his face was red with anger, and he looked like he was not feeling well. The other 2 old men looked ugly, felt extremely heavy, and even felt a hint of despair. Originally, I wanted to rely on the old man in white robe to quickly deal with the others and then support them. Unexpectedly, the old man in white robe was the first one to be seriously injured and fell to the ground. He didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Even though they tried their best to look Yulo in the eyes, only then did they realize that they still underestimated Yulo. Except for Rocks, who was 1 against 3, Yulo could defeat the old man in white robe before Shiki and Newgate, which is enough to show that Yulo's strength is stronger than Shiki and Newgate. Even if Shiki and Newgate can compete or even gain the upper hand against any of the 5 elders, defeating them is impossible. In Rock's pirate, Yulo's current strength is second only to Rock's. Shiki, Newgate, who fought hard, almost had his eyes bulging out of his head, and felt that his heart could not bear it. The excitement brought by Conqueror's lingering shock had not subsided before another more exciting one came. Quote, quote. Shiki, Newgate, glanced at Yulo with resentment in his eyes. He wanted to say something, but found that he couldn't. Yulo, this bastard, can't he keep a low profile? We are fighting, not watching your personal show, let us concentrate on fighting for a while. However, Yulo's strength spurred Shiki and Newgate to become more competitive. During the battle, Shiki and Newgate exerted all their strength, their fighting spirit reached a new high, and their fighting power became more and more courageous as they fought. The situation of the 2 sides who were originally evenly matched has changed. Shiki and Newgate have a slight tendency to have the upper hand. After the blonde old man started his rampage, he immediately gave up his defense and attacked Rocks desperately. Even if he was injured, he didn't care. Seeing this, the man in a suit looked at the old man with glasses. The old man sighed and nodded solemnly. The old man with glasses knew that the blonde old man was going to fight, and the balance of the situation was already tilted towards the pirates. Even if they risk their lives, they have to wait until Marine returns to be worthy of the price. Rocks, we fought hard. The 3 of them surrounded Rocks and attacked wildly, their faces becoming hideous and terrifying. They were almost in a desperate situation. Before Marine came back, they could only struggle hard. It was worth risking their lives. Compared with the previous timid defense, the desperate attack was obviously more effective, and Rock's suppression was suddenly relieved a lot. Although there were injuries on the 3 of them, these minor injuries had little impact on the 3 of them due to the impact of the attack. Ha 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 ha, this looks cool. As the 3 men became determined to fight, Rox's fighting spirit also skyrocketed, and only then did he feel the pressure. Rox had an arrogant smile on his face. They had already booked the victory in this battle in advance. In front of Rox, even if the three of them risk their lives, the outcome will not change at all. The edge of the blade flashed, and the top conqueror's haki exploded out instantly like thunder in the clear sky. With a ferocious smile on his face and a red light in his eyes, he bravely faced the attack of the three people. Rox made a fist with his left hand and hammered at the three of them. A domineering impact burst out. For this move, Rox used the weapon color to release, which is the so-called emission haki. Bang! The three people's joint attack was blocked by the invisible barrier. They were not surprised, but instead became even more crazy. Once the offensive stops, the three of them will be hurt, so they continue to attack. However, Rox used both hands and was one step ahead of them. The long knife wrapped around Conquerors, the scarlet edge bloomed, and it struck fiercely. Directly interrupting the three people's offensive, the nearest blonde old man was actually chopped down. Rox Conqueror's entanglement was more ferocious than Yulo's. The impact of the top Conquerors hit the blonde old man to the ground and was deeply embedded in the earth. Sudden, overbearing, and extremely terrifying. Whether it's Conquerors or weapon colors, they are all top-notch. The bespectacled old man's eyes were horrified, and Rox's combat power exploded, instantly knocking the blonde old man away. The ground exploded and dust was scattered, and the blonde old man could not be seen clearly, but he was probably seriously injured. The old man with glasses and the man in a suit suddenly felt their pressure doubled. Rox will not stop his offensive just because the blonde old man is injured and absent. Sword energy slashing, emission haki, Conqueror's pressure, attacks come one after another. The old man with glasses and the man in a suit were defeated one after another while resisting with difficulty, and their bodies were already scarred. Rox, who was unhurried, raised his sword again, and Conqueror's haki entangled him, intending to injure another person. Not good. The defeated old man with glasses shrank suddenly, his face suddenly changed, and he was horrified. If this blow lands, he won't feel any better than the blonde old man. Seeing Conquerors entangled and falling with a long knife, the man in the suit was heartbroken and stood in front of the old man with glasses. 6 Styles life burns. The man in the suit had a determined look in his eyes, and he let out a loud drink, and the breath in his body suddenly surged. A large amount of white gas appeared, wrapping the man in the suit, and faced the Conqueror's entanglement, and he rushed forward. Quote, quote. The old man with glasses trembled. He raised his left hand slightly, trying to pull the man in the suit back, but finally took it back. 6 Styles life burning is the forbidden technique among the 6 styles. It consumes the user's life and temporarily improves body functions to achieve a surge in strength. The more lives it burns, the stronger it becomes. Conversely, the less it burns, the weaker it becomes. The man in the suit burns his life. If he faces other enemies, he still has a chance of survival, but it is Rox. No matter how much life is burned or how little, the man in the suit will probably die. The bespectacled old man's eyes were complicated, and the matter could not be undone. He quickly retreated into the distance. Conqueror's haki's wrapped blade violently struck the man in the suit. If it were a high-level Conqueror's haki, maybe he could withstand it, but it was a top-level Conqueror's haki. Boom! The white mist on the man in the suit, after persisting for a few seconds, was finally overwhelmed and dissipated. Boom! Rox's long sword was slightly raised, and Conqueror's substantial impact knocked the man in the suit into the air. The next moment, he smiled ferociously, sword energy flowed from the blade, and he disappeared from the spot. Puff! A flash of sword light flashed, a subtle voice sounded, and the weak man in a suit had his head and body split into 2. Blah blah blah. There was a rain of blood falling from the sky, and the man in a suit fell to the ground, his head rolling far away before he stopped. Except for the sound of fighting, everyone was silent. Burn life and increase combat power. Yulo looked at the man in the suit and was quite interested in this move. However, his 6 forms are only at an advanced level, and he has not yet come into contact with this forbidden technique. Rox, you damn! As soon as the blonde old man stood up, he witnessed this scene, his eyes filled with bloodshot eyes. Although the status of the man in the suit is not as good as that of his old friend the old man in white robes, he fights side by side with him and is willing to burn his life in order to protect the old man with glasses. What's more, as an admiral combat force, each one is precious even to the world government, and it is extremely difficult to cultivate. The death of an admiral's combat power is not only a matter of face, but also a huge loss of combat power. Rox beheaded the man in the suit, and then looked directly at the old man with glasses. Rox, you dare! The blonde old man stood staggeringly, and suddenly saw this scene, and roared with splitting eyes. Facing Rox alone, the old man with glasses would never be able to withstand it. Immediately, the blonde old man endured the pain, jumped into the air and rushed over. At this time, a strong wind came, and the tip of the knife with flashing light stabbed from his side. The blonde old man had no time to dodge and punched out from behind. Clang! The armed fist collided with the tip of the knife, and the blonde old man took a few steps back. Ah, Yulo, if you dare to block me, you are looking for death. Yulo's sudden attack made the blonde old man lose his mind. If he couldn't get over, the old man with glasses would be in danger. He couldn't care about anything at this time. No matter how strong Yulo was, he would fight to the death. The blonde old man didn't say anything. He just kept his head down and hammered hard. He looked powerful, but in fact he was chaotic. Yulo glanced at Rox and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Then he moved around and dealt with it with ease. Rox's terrifying strength is probably beyond the admiral level. With 1 against 3, one person was killed, and the blonde old man could feel that the offensive was obviously weakening. For such an obvious price, even if he wasn't severely injured, it wouldn't be much different. Shiki and Newgate were shocked. The battle continued until now, and finally one person died, Admiral. With 1 against 3, Rox was able to suppress 3 people, which was already ridiculously strong. It suddenly breaks out, directly injuring one person, and then kills another person with great force. It is simply invincible. Is Rox strength a bottomless pit? Then he looked at Yulo, who was fighting against the blonde old man. Yulo and Rox had defeated their opponents, but Shiki and Newgate were not far behind. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit couldn't help but feel sad, and despair began to spread in their hearts. The two have been looking for opportunities to escape, but Shiki and Newgate are in a tight fight. In the end, not only was he unable to escape, but he lost focus and was caught by Shiki and Newgate. A close fight, Shiki and Newgate began to suppress. The bespectacled old man facing Rox alone breathed a sigh of relief with determination in his eyes. He held the long knife tightly and faced it calmly. Old guy, it's your turn. Rox pressed forward step by step, and the Scarlet Conqueror spread along his right hand towards the blade. The aura it exuded was like an ancient ferocious beast, and the red light in its eyes locked on the old man with glasses. The eyes of the old man with glasses were dull. He was already determined to die. He was alone and had no hope. Anyway, he is going to die, but before he dies, he must let Rox shed his skin. 6 styles. Just when the old man with glasses was about to burn his life away, Rox stopped and even his momentum dissipated. This speed, it's faster than expected. Rox's heart moved, his face returned to normal, he looked towards the end of the sea, raised his eyebrows and murmured. As the captain of the pirate group, Rox made a quick decision and turned back to the ground, ignoring the old man with glasses. Shiki, lower the ship, it's time to go. Linlin, Kaido, take the crew and get on the ship quickly. Rox slashed out a flash of sword light, destroyed the remaining humanoid weapons, and quickly issued the order. Gia ha ha ha, old guy, I will definitely kill you next time. Gi la la la, let's leave the victory or defeat to the next time. Shiki and Newgate fought back and forth, forced the opponent back, and then retreated to Rox. The oversized hull slowly fell. Linlin and Kaido organized the pirates to quickly board the ship. Shiki and Newgate stood ready to prevent the old guy from suddenly attacking. The situation suddenly changed, and the blonde old man's mind suddenly became clearer. Seeing Rox, Newgate, and Shiki, they all retreated, but Yulo was still fighting with him. Come and help me quickly and capture Yulo. The blonde old man's heart moved, and he suppressed his anger and woke up the 3 old men. Then the chaotic offensive began to become more orderly, and they pestered Yulo desperately, as if they were afraid that Yulo would run away. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit couldn't help feeling relieved when they saw Shiki and Newgate retreating. The 2 of them were obviously aware of the situation, and even though their expressions were extremely ugly, they did not pursue them. The man in a suit from CP0 died in the battle, the old man in white robe was seriously injured and unconscious, and even the soldiers from the science department died cleanly. Now there are only two of them left, the old man with glasses and the old man with blonde hair. With Rock's strength, they can't stay even if Rox and his party want to leave, let alone dragging Marine back. The old man with glasses was dripping with cold sweat and was in a state of shock. It was as if he had walked away from the gate of hell, and he almost collapsed. It has to be said that Rock's murderous intention made him feel like he was dead. This time the five of us go into battle in person, or we going to face failure in the end. Rox has unfathomable strength. I am afraid that only that adult can defeat him head-on. There is also the new recruit Yulo, a humanoid monster who is second only to Rox in threat. If they can't be solved this time, there will be endless troubles in the future. A deep sense of powerlessness permeates the hearts of the three of them. Come and help me quickly and capture Yulo. At this moment, the old man's roar resounded in his ears, deafening and piercing his mind. Brush, brush, brush. The three old men were shocked and trembled all over before they all came to their senses. The panic on the faces of the three people flashed away. They had fallen into a daze just now. If it hadn't been for the blonde old man's timely roar, they would have missed the great opportunity. They looked at Yulo who was fighting, and then glanced at Rox. They found that Rox was indifferent and his face was terrifyingly calm. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit subconsciously looked at the old man with glasses, with a questioning look in their eyes. Rox acted calmly and turned a blind eye to the place, making the two of them very cautious. The old man with glasses hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth and nodded, making a great determination. Yulo is indeed powerful, but if Rox doesn't intervene between the four of them, he doesn't believe Yulo can stop it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Making a decisive decision, the three of them ran forward, their bodies turned into afterimages, and they rushed over from three directions. Captain Rox, are we really not going to help? Whitebeard Newgate looked solemn and his palms were sweating. Golden Lion Shiki's eyes widened with anger. If Rox hadn't spoken, he would have rushed forward. Shiki and Newgate are inevitably a little worried about Yulo. After all, there are 4 Admiral fighters, while Rox only has 1. Don't worry, Yulo doesn't want to fight to the death. He wants to see his limits. Rox was thoughtful, with a smile on his face, and his eyes twinkled as he looked at Yulo. Shiki's mind turned, which was also in line with Yulo's arrogant and invincible character. Then the anger died down, and Newgate and Rox watched the battle quietly. The figures of the 3 old men drew a trajectory in the air, getting closer and closer to Yulo. Including the blonde old man, the 4 of them were located in the southeast, northwest, and formed a siege. Come on, ha ha ha. Yulo's sense of sight, knowledge, and color suddenly became excited when he noticed the approach of the 3 people, and he couldn't help but laugh wildly. Do you really think you are Rox? HMPH, Yulo, you are so arrogant, you should pay the price. Seeing the opportunity coming, the blonde old man stepped back violently and shouted angrily with a gloomy face. Faced with the siege of the 4 of them, Yulo's arrogant reaction made the blonde old man furious. But this was not the time to be impulsive. He couldn't take down Yulo on his own. 4 people must take action at the same time to be absolutely sure that Rox can take down Yulo in one fell swoop before Rox can react. The 3 old men arrived in an instant, without stopping at all, and entered Yulo's intended range. Hee. Yulo's eyes shone brightly, and his fighting spirit rose enthusiastically. Facing the fighting power of the 4 admirals, Yulo's blood boiled, he was excited and fearless. He just wanted to see the combined strength of the 4 admirals. Although their combat power had dropped a lot, either due to injuries or reduced physical strength, they still should not be underestimated. It's just a good time to see your own limits, and there are rewards for checking in on missions. If you can defeat a few more people, the rewards will be even more impressive. Yulo, die. The 4 old men took action, roared in unison, and the 4 stood up. Boom. 4 auras erupted and connected in a square shape, surrounding Yulo in the center. Boom, 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 boom. The air exploded, and the air current swept wildly, forming the air current Uzumaki. The 4 old men took action boldly, with 3 hockey fist seals and a flash of cold sword light, and they attacked. Captain Rox, can Yulo withstand it? With the strength of the 4 admirals, it's still too late to take action. Such an astonishing scene made Shiki and Newgate unable to sit still. If it were one of them, he would have been seriously injured even if he was lucky enough to survive, and his end would not be better than that of the old man in white robe. Why are you two panicking? Look at Yulo's calmness and just watch the battle quietly. Rox raised the corners of his mouth and said with confidence, as if he was the one being besieged. Shiki and Newgate heard this and had no choice but to wait and watch obediently, but their bodies were always ready to rush over if Yulo was in danger. The captain and crew members on the ship also looked at it with shock on their faces, and at the same time, they were also looking forward to Yulo's surprise. Where does Yulo get his confidence? Kaido stood behind Linlin, his eyes full of horror and muttering to himself. Kaido definitely recognizes Yulo's pervert and power, and has been convinced of it. But faced with the attacks of the 4 old men, he could not convince himself that Yulo could resist them. Ha 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 ha, I've been waiting for now. Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. Open it. As Yulo shouted wildly, his robes moved automatically without any wind, and the momentum he had accumulated for a long time soared into the sky. Qinglian's inner fire emerged out of thin air and transformed into Uzumaki, which rapidly expanded. The surrounding temperature rose sharply, and a heat wave swept across the sky. Under Yulo's powerful compression, Qinglian's Earth Core Fire Ultimate burned, and most of the 4 old men's full blows were directly offset. No, go back, go back. The bespectacled old man's face changed drastically. He had no time to make any decision and had to exit immediately. The other 3 people did the same, subconsciously avoiding his sharp edge, but something happened suddenly and it was too late. The surging green fire Uzumaki directly engulfed the 4 people, rapidly expanded dozens of meters, and enveloped them all. Hiss. Who, hiss. Damn, we miscalculated. Blue flames, terrifying temperature. Marineford was silent, and the difficult voices of the 4 old men echoed in everyone's ears. Master Yulo, so strong, big. All the attacks of the 4 old men were neutralized, and the people were also swallowed up. Even the temperature of the air has begun to heat up. Everyone on the pirate ship saw Yulo's strength and resisted 4 old men with one blow. And listening to the voices of the old men, it seemed that it was not easy to endure Yulo's cyan flames. All the crew members were shocked, with awe in their eyes. They all felt that Yulo was simply amazing. Shiki, who was originally worried about Newgate, was relieved of his previous worries. La 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 la, I almost forgot, Yulo's fire ability is really terrifying. Whitebeard Newgate patted his head and laughed relaxedly for a while. Yulo has not used fire since the beginning of the war, and has been using swordsmanship and hockey. Newgate almost forgot that Yulo still had a trump card that he hadn't used yet. This trump card is naturally the Logia Devil Fruit, Qinglian's earth-centered fire ability, and its ultra-high temperature burning, even he is afraid of it. Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. So that's what it's called, it's quite appropriate. Golden Lion Shiki, with shining eyes, thought about it carefully and felt that this name was very good. Yulo's cyan flame ability left a deep impression on him. When Yulo was able to defeat him, the so-called Qinglian Earth Core Fire was one of the most powerful tools he relied on. No one in the entire Rox Pirate, including Rox, all cadres and crew members, would not admit the power of Qinglian's Earth Core Fire. Rox had a faint smile on his face, smiling and watching the battlefield in the distance. The mighty green fire Uzumaki rapidly rotated and expanded, swallowing the 4 old men. The moment they were submerged by the green fire, the severe burning pain made the 4 old men feel dizzy. As if enveloped by Shinigami's flames, driven by this palpitating mind, the 4 old men subconsciously exploded and activated armament hockey with all their strength, covering their entire bodies tightly. This was able to withstand the burning, but the high temperature baked and the water in the body evaporated. The remaining physical strength of the 4 old men was exhausted, and they were in an uncomfortable state at this time. The green fire Uzumaki spread in all directions, passing over the 4 old men, forming a flame Uzumaki that continued to rotate, as if it was endless. Yulo and the 4 old men were surrounded in the center of Uzumaki, invisible to outsiders. The crew paid attention eagerly, and observation hockey penetrated. But as soon as they got close, the hot breath rushed towards them, and the crew couldn't resist it, so they had to give up. Only Rocks, Newgate, Shiki, Linlin and Kaido can sense the battle situation in the center of Uzumaki. Uzumaki passed by, 4 old men, their figures revealed and in a state of disarray. The clothes are ragged, the skin is slightly burnt, and even the old man with a long beard has his beard burned off. Cough, cough, cough. The 4 of them were still in shock, and they retreated directly to the edge of the flame Uzumaki and distanced themselves from Yulo. We were too careless and ignored an obvious point. The old man with glasses secretly regretted it. He wanted to retreat further, only to find that he had reached the end. This Yulo is really tricky. If it weren't for his physical weakness, I would have defeated him just now. The old man in a suit roared in a low voice, with veins popping out on his neck. His eyes were full of unwillingness, but deep down in his heart, he was also afraid. What would happen if they were like the white-robed old man, exhausted, unable to perform armament hockey, and engulfed by Qinglian's inner fire? The blonde old man and the long-bearded old man looked gloomy and said nothing, waiting for the bespectacled old man's decision. The 4 of them were so eager to attack that they ignored Yulo's useless, signature cyan fire ability. One last-ditch effort. In the flash of lightning, the bespectacled old man's thoughts were flowing and he forced himself to make a decision. This operation achieved nothing and suffered heavy losses. Rocks wanted to leave, but they couldn't stop him. He didn't want to give up just like that. With Yulo alone in front of him, there was still hope for the 4 of them to join forces. The other 3 old men nodded solemnly and prepared for the worst. Boom, 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 just when the 4 of them were preparing to finally give it a try. The light between heaven and earth suddenly became dark, accompanied by rolling thunder. The 4 people suddenly looked up and saw a clear sky. Dark clouds rolled in at some point, and blue thunder intertwined between the clouds. The sudden thundercloud was so powerful that everyone outside Uzumaki was stunned. Boom, Zila, crackling. Like a bolt from the blue, the roar was deafening. A lightning beam fell from the sky, and the crackling sound of thunder penetrated the air. This. The crew members in the distance looked at this scene, magnificent hockey, and their hearts were shaken. Ha 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 ha, it feels so good. Yulo stretched out his arms, looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. The lightning beam fell and sank into his body, feeling extremely comfortable. Breath of thunder, open, Yulo shouted happily. His aura surged, his clothes swayed, and his power swept over the entire audience. Countless arcs of electricity burst out, piercing the green fire Uzumaki with the power they spread, and shot out. The pirates on the ship, Linlin and Kaido, looked at the earth-shattering scene and felt the power of the god of thunder descending to earth. Everyone's eyes were dull, their expressions were frozen, and everyone was dumbfounded. It's his grandma's fault. This kid Yulo actually has a trump card. After Golden Lion Shiki was shocked, he cursed and left the group chat. Gee, are you still letting others live? Whitebeard Newgate was still laughing, but his laughter was not as lively. Rocks is well informed and can't help but frown. He also knows a few secret techniques to improve combat power. I just don't know if this secret technique will have any side effects. Yulo is his trump card and he doesn't allow any mistakes. But now that it has been used, it is better to wait and see what happens, and then ask Yulo to find out the situation later. Being in the center of the green fire Uzumaki, the 4 old men felt deeply, and Yulo's momentum suddenly increased greatly. The terrifying pressure, like Conqueror's hockey, instantly shocked the 4 people. Secret technique, it's a secret technique, how could he do it? The blonde old man was shocked, his face was full of disbelief, and he screamed out in surprise. The old man with a long beard and the old man in a suit also had expressions of disbelief on their faces, as if they had seen a ghost. All the secrets in the sea have long been wiped out by the world government and disappeared for 100 years. The only place where the secret exists is deep in Mariajoy, among the flowers of Pangu. Even they, the 5 elders, cannot directly practice the secret technique. The 6th forbidden technique, life burning, was passed down by that adult. Damn, let's go. The old man with glasses cursed, suppressing his fear and shock, and rushed directly towards Uzumaki. The other 3 old men saw what was happening and followed closely behind them, soaring into the sky as quickly as possible. Originally, the 4 of them didn't have much confidence, so they could only give it a try. Now that Yulo has used the secret technique, his momentum has increased so much, not to mention his strength. No matter how strong the ghost is, it is still best to take action. It is not too late to take revenge. The future is long. Haha, want to run? Can you run away? Suddenly, an arrogant voice sounded. Thunder and lightning were intertwined all over Yulo's body. He looked at the four old men with indifferent eyes, trying to escape. Boom! Suddenly, the green fire Uzumaki became restless, and its power increased to a higher level. It began to shrink crazily, the central space quickly shrunk, and it once again swept towards the four old men. At one go, rush out. At this moment, there is nothing else to worry about. The bespectacled old man's face turned red, veins popped out, and with a roar, he rushed forward desperately. Ah, ah, ah. The other three old men made low roars and also pushed forward with all their strength. But how could Yulo let them escape? The four old men took off rapidly, surpassing Yulo in an instant, and rushed straight to the mouth of Uzumaki. It's too late, it's too late. There was a bright electric light in Yulo's eyes, Reikiri was placed across his chest, and his left hand gently stroked the blade. On Reikiri's blade, the electric light began to beat, and began to become violent and violent. Qinglian Earth Heart Fire, seal up. Before he finished speaking, Qinghuo Uzumaki's mouth closed and opened instantly. The only gap was closed, and the green fire Uzumaki became a sealed flame space. The scorching hot breath could not be vented and filled the entire space directly, and the temperature was twice as high as before. All this happened in an instant, leaving people unable to react. When the green fire Uzumaki mouth closed, it was accompanied by thunder and thunder. Thunder breath, 7 forms. Blue fire thunder god. Green fire burst out, thunder and lightning exploded, the two echoed and went berserk at the same time. Yulo's figure disappeared instantly, and only a blue dragon, intertwined with green fire and thunder, was seen across the sky. And the green fire Uzumaki also dissipated between heaven and earth in an instant. Yulo's blue fire thunder god move is much more powerful than the previous blue dragon roar. Rox, who was silent, finally spoke rarely, his words full of recognition for Yulo. Golden Lion Shiki and Whitebeard Newgate, when they heard Rox's words, their faces flashed with surprise, and they fell into rare silence. Rox can be said to be unfathomable. He has always watched and said nothing about any of Yulo's actions before. But now, he took the initiative to speak and said such words, which was undoubtedly an affirmation of this move and Yulo's strength. Shiki and Newgate, their eyes fixed on the battlefield, observation hockey is always paying attention. What Rox said was much more powerful, but for the two of them, it was much more. After all, the gap between Shiki and Newgate and Rox is not even in the same rank. They wanted to see how powerful Yulo's trick was. Facing the combat power of the four admirals, although they are not in peak condition, if they want to defend with all their strength, they cannot be underestimated. Boy Yulo, to what extent can he do it? The light of the blue dragon reflected in the eyes of the two people, shining extremely brightly. Roar! The cyan dragon hovered into the sky, green fire and thunder and lightning surged. It was dozens of meters long, but its speed was as fast as ultimate. Just like lightning flashing across the sky, a flash of light flashed across the sky. Everyone squinted their eyes and felt that the entire sky was filled with flashes of light. It was at this moment that the green-blue divine dragon swallowed 4 people, and its dozens of meters of dragon body passed by the 4 old men. Ah! A scream of pain echoed through the sky. Scandium. Immediately afterwards, the sound of the sword being sheathed came to an end. The dazzling light dissipated, and the pirates below slowly opened their eyes. The terrifying aura just now made what they saw and heard had no effect. It wasn't until they opened their eyes that the pirates were able to see clearly the outcome of the battlefield in the distance. This is, too, terrifying. Those 4 old men seemed to be seriously injured. This move is so powerful. If it were us, we would definitely die. You idiot, are you out of your mind? Master Yulo just throws a move and we all burp, there is no need for this move. Many pirates on the ship recovered from the shock and began to marvel and talk in various ways. Kaido stood at the bow of the boat with a stunned expression, his jaw was about to dislocate, and he still didn't know anything. Only the green fire and thunder and lightning intertwined, like a flash in the pan, the blue dragon, constantly replaying in his mind. Next to her, Charlotte Linlin looked extremely shocked. She said nothing, but deep down in her heart, there were turmoils everywhere. Because her eyes betrayed her, the sun-like rays were much more blazing than her desire to have a child. The crew members standing near Linlin noticed this gaze and consciously stepped away, while praying silently in their hearts. Of course, not for themselves, but for their excellent Lord Yulo. In the distant air, all the energy has dissipated, but the surrounding space is still filled with heat, and blue lightning arcs crackle from time to time. Yulo, who was high in the sky, and Reikiri had already withdrawn their sheaths, and the airflow kept coming. Yulo's robes were fluttering, and he looked down at the 4 old men with a look of disdain. The 4 old men below were in terrible condition. They were all in a miserable state, with blood all over their bodies and no intact skin. Especially the chests of the 4 people all had horizontal scars, the flesh and blood were completely cut open, and the white bones were exposed. The 4 of them gasped for air, the throbbing deep in their souls still not dissipating. It felt as if the Shinigami was holding his throat, unable to break free for a long time. Ah, Gudong, puff. Suddenly, the blonde old man couldn't hold on and vomited out a large mouthful of blood. After suffering a blow from Conqueror's entanglement, he was already suffering from considerable injuries. Now to add insult to injury, the blonde old man's body reached its limit and could no longer bear it. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.